Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we will be talking about reading tracking and how I've done this, kind of my history with this and some tips and tricks for you. This week I've been a bit sick, which is why I'm filming in my old background and not out in the forest. And also this is the second time that I filmed this because I lost the audio for my first video, so sorry for that. But yeah, with no further ado, let's just get into this. I got inspired to do this video because I had a conversation some weeks ago with a friend who mentioned that they were tracking their hobby, climbing, and it kind of broke it for them. And it was so annoying to do it. It kind of lost the magic of it. And I thought that was very interesting because to me, tracking my reading has been such a fun thing to do in the last couple of years because everyone reads for different reasons, but I think at this point in my reading career, I want to be reading very consciously. I want to read diversely, and having the information of what I read has helped me take decisions. And these decisions that I've made have improved the reading that I do towards the goals that matter to me. So that is not to say that you all need to be tracking your reading. I think for some hobbies I do it, for some I don't. So I think the goal of this video is just to show you what my journey has been and maybe inspire you to do it, or if you've never considered doing it, how it can help you make more informed reading decisions. I started tracking my reading around 2020, and I never really considered Goodreads because if you've been on that website for more than 2 seconds, you'll realize that it's awful, it's super not user intuitive, it's quite ugly. The UI is just completely outdated, and also Amazon owns Goodreads. So both because it's such an awful app to use and I don't want to support that company, I never really considered using Goodreads. Around 2020 at least, when I started looking into this, there are other things that started popping up. And this one, Storygraph, popped up as kind of this more like indie reading tracker back in, when I started like thinking about this. And I actually started with Storygraph, and I loved how easy it was to like add books and like have reading challenges. And I even really liked how it has like all of these stats. It just has like these pretty graphs which show you things about like the mood of the books that you're reading, the length. It has like monthly stats on how many pages and how many books you've read, like the genres, the authors, the languages. So it actually has a lot of cool stats, and these monthly reports were always so like fun to see. So definitely Storygraph was like really good. Like to me, that was such a big improvement to Goodreads, and especially if you don't care about like tailoring metrics for your own needs, I think Storygraph is amazing. As I would put it as like the best alternative to Goodreads that is still like super user friendly. You don't need to do almost anything to get a lot out of it, and unless you really want to customize your graphs and all of these, then I think the Storygraph is the way to go, and I enjoyed it for a long time. I've used it for like 3-4 years maybe, but I realized that there were some things that I wanted to track that Storygraph didn't let me do. So the main things I think, well, the first biggest thing was that for whatever reason, at least when I used Storygraph, it categorized like LGBTQ plus as a genre, which I always thought was kind of weird. Because as I've said in other videos, like that is just like an element of a story. You can have like LGBTQ plus representation in sci-fi or in historical fiction or in nonfiction. So that was definitely, or at least to me, it's 100% not a genre. So the fact that it like bundled it together with all the genres like skewed things in a way that I just didn't like. That was the first thing that was like, I don't like this about Storygraph so much. Obviously, I wanted to have my own graphs and my own metrics, which Storygraphs doesn't really let you customize metrics. I think you can do things by label, but then it's kind of a lot of work. So that I didn't like. And particularly, I wanted to track like the
the authors that I was reading, because I realized, or my guess was that I was reading a lot of just like white male authors from like the United States or the UK. And yeah, I feel like at this point in my reading career, I want to be reading more diversely. That is something that it's important to me. I am a BIPOC person myself, so reading representation that is from people that are like me, but also different like me from other continents, other cultures, and not just like the same background of authors. I think that is important to me, and especially because in this capitalistic world, if we are supporting BIPOC and underrepresented authors, that is important for the business and for these authors to be able to have, their works published and whatnot. So yeah, that is important to me. So I wanted to track that, not in Storygraph. Maybe that was it. And so I was like, okay, I want to start doing my own kind of tracking. And to that end, I started, or I was already a big fan of Notion. And Notion is amazing. Like, I love Notion. I was a huge promoter. I mean, I still use Notion a lot for note taking and other kind of personal things. But I wanted to try it for reading tracking because Notion has this thing with databases that are so easy to set up and connect, and that was like it sounded like perfect for me. So for like a year more or less, I used this Notion tracker, and I really spent some time making it look pretty because I thought that if it was not pretty, I was not going to use it. And so, well, now it's not as great because I stopped using this a while ago, but here basically I would have a section with everything that I was reading at the moment, and I would actually for each book load the cover of the book. So this would look more like a gallery of the front covers of the books that I was reading. It was a bit prettier, but obviously like that is more work, and I stopped doing that kind of quickly. I also had the same thing for books that I was reading that were upcoming. So the one or two books that I was basically planning to read next, I would also have those show up here with their front covers. So it looked really pretty. I had this like huge database for just all the books. Like every single entry was a book here. I would track like if it was in my TBR, if I DNF'd or posted, and this is a filter for, yeah. I would track like if it was in my physical library, if I lent it from the library, or if it was in my Kindle, like the priority for this book when I read it, the country of the author and their gender, and the race. Um, because as I said, I wanted to track like BIPOC authors more. And I also had these like lists for like queer books that I wanted to read, Mexico and Latin American books, and so on. So that was kind of the main table. I was tracking series as well. Um, what else do I have? Some goals. And then I always do this kind of like TBR tables that are super ugly, but at least it gives me like a year outlook of like more or less the plans. Actually, I did have some things for like my YouTube videos and the Reddit bingo. This is actually quite pretty. So because I was no longer using Storygraph, I had my own kind of bingo board page here. Again, a lot of like connected databases. So I put in a lot of time in this, and I think it was working really, really well. Like I really, really like what I built here. The one thing that I never was able to do in Notion, which is basically the reason why I stopped using this, was charts. And this is more like the nerd part of me, but I really like charts. I think it's really cool to see information aggregated and summarized in a like pretty beautiful visual way. I think it's so much easier because here, I think maybe I had that, yeah, in the goals. So the way I had to do that in Notion was through these like super complicated kind of small scripts that would like get all the information for like, okay, so this is like a stat summary, so this is a percentage of books by genre, and as you can see it looks like awful, like it's so ugly, and it took a lot of like manual tweaking, and this was just for like the genre of the book. But if I wanted to do things that were a bit more complicated, it was a mess. Like honestly, I was pushing Notion, I think, beyond what it's meant to do best, so that is more like my fault. And the only ways that I found you could make graphs from like databases in Notion were through like third-party services that in most of the times like they cost extra money, and I did not want to do that. I think there is one service that it has like um, integration to Notion that for free you have like one chart, which meant that if, I mean, you will see in a second, I have a lot of charts. And so I would have to be like, every time I wanted to see a chart, I would need to like edit the formula so that it like pulled from different, basically I would have to redo the charts every single time I wanted to see a specific chart, which is crazy. And I did not want to pay extra money uh, to do this. So that is at the end of the day why I ended up deciding to like ditch everything and just do everything on Google. So I'm gonna open a new window. So this is for sure not as pretty as a Notion, but I will just quickly go through my Google Sheets setup. So I have this like homepage with some buttons to like quickly entry like things. So for instance, like if I just want to add a new book, I can just I have these like scripts that you can just add the book or an author or a series, and every time I finish a book or start a new book, I just like click on these buttons and it will automatically change statuses and whatnot. So this books table is basically the same that I show in Notion, just that here I'm tracking a lot more things. Like I started tracking like the size of the like the pages of the book. For instance, if it is a book that I read through a book club. Um, Also, something that I wanted to track that couldn't do in Notion. Um, well, I could, but I didn't have that set up. But you can definitely do this in Storygraph. Is like books read in translation, so I can track like the original language and the translated, or like what language it's translated from. Um, and then I have like authors and series. And for instance, for authors, I now track just three very simple things. Like for like race, I just care about if they are like white or BIPOC. And for gender, I care about male, female, unspecified, multiple, and and non-binary authors and their country. And the reason that I track this is, as I said, I want to be reading more purposefully and more like diversely. And so all of that just brings us to the lovely like stats pages. And here I just have like a ton of charts. And I have like two columns, one for like the current year, and everything you see on the right side is kind of like historical data. So everything, including this current year. So I have like how many books I've finished and like the percentage of the TBR that I am done with and like how many series I have open. So that's just like some generic, like big stats or metrics. Um, and then I have like a chart about like the genre of the book. I split this into like main genre and secondary genre because some books just have like multiple things. Something that I started doing this year also is having like sci-fantasy as a single genre because I feel like enough of what I read is kind of a blend of sci-fi and fantasy to yeah, like I think it's good to have that. Um, so this is like for this year and this is for again all years. So you can see that this year I've been quite split between like fantasy, sci-fi, and contemporary. Whereas, and that is something that I guess is growing because if you compare that to like the historical chart, then um, fantasy has like dominated, and then a bit of sci-fi, and then maybe like literary and contemporary fiction a bit like there. Whereas like this year it's been pretty split between those four. So that's cool to see. Then I have, as I said, queer representation, and the way I do this is that I track like because I do think there is a difference between books that are about the queer representation or like queer characters as their main characters, um, and that have, even if the story is not about like the queer experience, that the main characters, if they are queer and that is part of their life, I think that is a bit different to having like a background person that maybe is in a relationship, in a queer relationship, but you don't really see these like these characters a lot, or it's not so important. So I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing, but I thought it was like nice to differentiate between like like, yes, there is representation in this book, like big yes, versus like there is some representation. It might not be super important. It might be like a single character that appear in the background, um, or have like a small interaction with the main characters, versus no representation at all. I don't know if this is going to be useful in the future, um, but I just feel like there were some books that I read recently or like last year that have like super super small representation, which is very cool. Like I love to see also like minimum or like, yeah, like small representation. Um, but it, like, tracking wise, felt weird to have that as whatever. Um, then I track like the book size, not really important, but it's just cool to see that. Also, like if the books, like where the books that I'm reading, where they're coming from my physical TBR, from the library, or like my Kindle. And as you can see, like over time, it's been like quite split. I am reading less and less on my Kindle just because I don't buy Kindle books anymore. So I actually don't have that many books left in my Kindle to read. And then obviously I've been using the library a ton. But something that is really cool to see is that like over time I have been reading more and more of my physical TBR, or like my physical library, which is super exciting. So that trend is yeah, nice to see here. Um, Book type is just to track like if the books are like standalones, first in series, last in series, anthologies, collections. This is something that I don't pay so much attention to, but it is kind of cool to see like if I'm like, for instance, this year I started 7 series, which is crazy to think about. I don't even know which ones they are. um, and I finished actually one series, and I will actually finish another one. So it's just like cool things to see, but not the most important maybe things. Um, Authors, this one is super cool. I like, and this is why I want to be like to have charts, because as you can see here, like, and 2019 is just a bucket for like everything before I started tracking. So it's not actually 2019, but like everything up to 2019. So that is like an outlier. Like, just don't think about it. But if you look at 2020, which is when I actually started tracking, and like see how I've been like reading more and more BIPOC authors every year, that is just so exciting to see. Uh, this year I'm almost at the 50-50. It's 48%, 51%. So I am almost there, and I expect this to grow even further, like in upcoming years. And I just want to see that, because I think it's so cool to read from BIPOC authors. There is so much quality uh, that is being published all the time, and they just don't get enough like marketing or whatever. But yeah, that is very cool to see. Mm, Same thing with the gender of the authors. Like in the past, I would read, I feel like, a lot more male, yeah, like male authors. I mean, this one has been a bit more like split over time, but I also want to be tracking like how many non-binary authors I'm reading, or like these multiple one. Anyways, here I think what I like seeing is that it's more or less around 50-50, which again, not that it's like good or bad, just it's good to see like where I'm at. So yeah, I just wanted to show you kind of what my tracking setup is. I know this is kind of nerdy, but I hope you found this interesting. If you are like interested in having access to this or trying my sheets, let me know. I guess I should be able to make that into a template or something. Um, I just hope that, yeah, like to me, reading is just my hobby, and I find so much joy out of it. But I also feel like I value um, reading like diverse stories and supporting authors that I think are worth supporting, because they are making, great representation of like queer stories, or come from like marginalized groups or countries that don't get a lot of international publishing. So those things are important to me. And the fact that I have this reading tracker lets me see what I'm reading and like make decisions out of that. So I find a lot of power in information and being able to take decisions that are informed on my own habits. I think it's just very powerful. So yeah, I like that I have been doing like adjustments over time to prioritize reading the things that I think are important to me. And so I would not be able to do that, I think, if I didn't have the stats, and particularly like charts are just so easy, like for these kind of like summaries. And so yeah, maybe as like a quick summary, like use Storygraph if you just want to have like some uh, charts and some like cool stats without putting a lot of work. I think it's a best replacement for Goodreads if you're in that level of like reading tracking. If you care about like custom metrics, I do think Google Sheets is the way to go. Like even though Notion, I praised it a lot, I feel like it's very fiddly if you don't like kind of handling databases and these kind of things. Like Sheets just has so much support and things you can do, and it's also quite easy. So yeah, I would say like that is a good place, and a lot of people have done their own like reading trackers in Google Sheets. So I am by no means the first person to come up with this, and there's a lot of people that have like their Google Sheets as templates published online. So uh, I'm not trying to say that this is like the ultimate Sheets tracker. I think my intention with this video is more to like show how reading tracking can help you achieve your reading goals if you have any. If you don't, that's also fine. Like as long as you're having fun, I think that's fine. And yeah, I think that's everything for today. Thank you and have a good day. Bye bye.